there's no car that can't work. It always boils down to price. So I'll go through two things here, which is kind of a good way to talk about it is I want someone to bring me their favorite car. And then we go through it. But you got to remember, I have to find places to put things. And taking out the gas tank is one thing, but batteries right now are a challenge. Our main goal with RiiSE going forward is to have our conversion kits at a certain price point, which we can talk about anytime, so that it's viable, economical, realistic, and sustainable for people when they do the math. But to answer your direct question, there's no car I can't do now in the sense of, but it really boils down to price because you want to do things. We at RiiSE want to do it quick and fast. If we want to do custom, it will take longer. But our whole goal as a commercialization of this business growing is to be able to have this car, you come in and within a month, it's converted to electric.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Joining me on today's EV-friendly podcast is Dean Kneider. Dean is the owner of RiiSE EV, a Vancouver-based company specializing in conversions of luxury and sports vehicles, as well as buses and fleets. Dean, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you begin? Tell us about your sort of personal journey in the industry and sort of how you arrived to where we are now, and then segue into telling our audience what is RiiSE EV, how it got started.
Thanks. I guess about 4 years ago, I started looking at EV sort of seriously, and we became very enamored with Tesla and the rise of it. People talked a little bit about Lucid 3 years ago, Canoe, a lot of the new cars, and I've always been enamored with the older cars.
Yeah.
And so for me, I started looking at researching who was doing conversions, how you could make it electric, and it was kind of old school technology. And my research, like I said, paper stacked up like the Rocky Mountains in my house of the type of cars, the equipment used, the motors, the battery management systems, everything that kind of went to make and it was, to me, it was an oversized golf cart.
Yeah.
And so about 4 years ago, I started researching, and I got sick for a while, and I spent some time just sitting around, and I drew up a business plan. And through mutual friends, another friend was saying to another friend, I'd like to do these cars. And there was a car company down in the States called Singer Automotive. And they're wonderful, and they do restorations of cars and make them just pristine. It was a 3-year wait list. That was just to get the car done. And then it became a year wait list to make it electric. And I was like, with all the people I know in the industry and my passion and love for things, especially when you love something and you're passionate, you kind of get it done quicker. And so from there, I kind of built a business plan, and I got connected with another guy who became my partner in all of this. And we have a few others that got really enamored with it. And we decided to pull the pin about 18 months ago and say, let's make RiiSE. It took us a while to, figure out what RiiSE was and what it stood for. And we had this grand plan, and then we've narrowed it down. And I say fail fast and pivot, where we were being all things to all people to start. We focused on doing cars and buses. Then we went into fleets, and then we started to we looked at marine, but we pulled away. We looked at a number of things because we didn't do all things.
Right.
And so that was our first car that we did. And from the time I assembled all the parts, in 3 months, I converted that 1976 Porsche 912 into a full electric car.
Right on. Well, why don't we go into the conversion process? First, what does RiiSE EV stand for? How did that name come about?
Well, with some marketing and some friends, the realization of innovative and integrated sustainable energy. For us, it was trying to figure out how power today can be seen in cars tomorrow, along with the circular economy of protecting the future by converting the past. Right. And so there were a number of ways to look at it. And so we kind of got away with the acronym, and RiiSE, we just wanted to rise up. And that's what it really became. We were taking something, rebirthing it. Like this car had a flat 87 horsepower engine. So flat four cylinder, 84.
This is one of the first cars
Yes. So it had a flat 87 horsepower engine. I put in with the team a Hyper 9 net gain motor with 32 kilowatt hours of battery power, and that gave me 130 horsepower. Now, that car is a unibodied Porsche, and they made that also in the 911. So why I chose that car is the scope and scale of that platform was from 1968 to about 1986. They made that exact body style.
Mm-hmm.
So when I made the kit for the car, we had all the drawings for it so that if you lived in Australia, I could make the exact same kit that's in there and ship it to you. And you could watch. So
you design the kits. This isn't something that you just buy offline and install. You're actually going through the process of designing a unique or a specialized kit to that car.
absolutely. And that's what I refer to in the industry as platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So that platform has, and the reason why is a Porsche 911, 912. The 911 had a flat six with about 130 horsepower.
Yeah.
We put in a dual Curtis motor and gave it about 150, and we put 55 kilowatt hours in there. I can go into the technical things in a bit, but I wanted to share it because in that car, it has a kit, and we bought all the parts, but it didn't come as a kit. We had to make the kit.
Yeah.
Buy the batteries. We had to fit the battery boxes in where the gas tank was. You'll see some pictures. We also had to take out the engine in the back end of the Porsche has about 2,200 parts. And it sits about like this. You'll see it. Well, that's the new engine. And as you can see, the motor, the EV motor in the middle is the Net Gain Hyper 9.
Mm-hmm.
And that produces about 9,000 RPM easily. It can go up to about 11,000 RPM. But we also kept the 5-speed manual transmission in this car.
Right.
So it butts up right against the transmission of the 1976 car. But you got to remember, redlining is about 7,000 RPM.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole computer program. So your 6 main components that I'll talk about, and I can refer back should you need. You've got your motor and your controller, and that controls the motor. Then you got your battery, and then you have your BMS, battery management system. Then you have your charger, and you generally would have a DC to DC converter, which would charge my house battery. And then you have a fuse box, and that can be seen on the front stuff. So
to the layman, it can sound very technical, but keep in mind, electric is actually simpler, far fewer parts.
Well, within that motor right there, there's like 20 moving parts. And as I told you earlier, there's 2,200 parts in a flat 4.
Yeah.
So what causes the frustration with old classic cars is the amount of maintenance it takes. Right? So we've built this car. It was done in 3 months with our team. And outside of changing the tires and the windshield, it's not had any problems.
Mm-hmm.
Once we designed it, built it, tested it, and built the computer program code for first, second, third, fourth gear, what the ratio was of RPMs before switching, and then the whole battery management system to watch your cells. It is a daily driver for me when I drive it in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
It costs about $1.30 at home to charge overnight on level 1 charging. It can do level 2, but I don't have a level 2 at home because I drive it 60 to 80 kilometers in a day, and I can charge it overnight on level 1.
That's right. Just plug it in your garage. So what is your typical kind of customer? Like, walk me through the process. Is this someone coming in, they know exactly what they want, they're kind of telling you what they want, or is there a pre-consultation? How does it all work?
Okay, great question. We started we evolved. So I bought 2 cars with the team, and we converted them.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to show what we could do. But in that process, we also had to do the interior. We had to do a number of things that we wouldn't do today. What the ideal customer for RiiSE going forward, as you rise up, is you take your personal favorite car you've been driving since you were 16, or your wife's favorite car. Our ideal way right now is you bring us your car and we'll electrify it. We'll make it an EV. Now, if you do need the interior to be redone like a Singer, as we talked about, or we have what we would like to do is our whole RiiSE interior package. And we have partners we're working with now where I want to say farm it out. We're just not big enough to do all things for all people.
But you're sort of one stop.
Yep. We're one stop. We go through it. And generally the 2 questions I will ask people when I'm consulting with them is, and guys and girls are different. It's logic and emotion. Right. And generally you're bringing maybe your high school car, your Volkswagen Bug that you had your first date in, and you still have it today.
Yeah. Which one's the logic? Which one's the emotion?
Generally, the question of the people.
Yeah.
Generally, the guy's the logic one. The woman's more emotional. But you know what? When somebody's been driving their car, it could have been your grandfather's car, something you're very emotionally attached to it.
That's right. Yeah.
And so the whole circular economy or keeping it on the road, we can get into other things. But I will go through a number of questions. But it boils down to how fast do you want it to go and how far do you want it to go? Because of the 6 components, those are the 2 main ones that will affect what we offer in the motor options and the battery options.
Is that a trade-off?
Yeah. Well, I've always said, like, they say good, fast, or cheap. Pick two. You can't have all three.
Right.
And what I always say, you can get range, performance, or speed. Pick two.
Hmm.
Because when I have to put in, 700 pounds of batteries, you might lose a bit of performance.
Right.
So you can get, because you want to go to Kelowna. This car, typically, I can drive to Whistler in this, and it's wonderful in Sea to Sky Highway. And at 150, you're low to the ground, and you're quiet as a mouse, and feels wonderful. I get to Whistler, I charge it up.
Right.
The other one we're building, the build will have a range for Kelowna, but I had to put more batteries in it. So, there's always these
So it
trade-offs.
is really getting at what the customer wants,
Yeah.
and qualifying.
Yeah.
They especially if they're making an investment. What kind of cars can work? Is there any car that can't work?
There's no car that can't work. It always boils down to price. So I'll go through two things here, which is kind of a good way to talk about it. Is I want someone to bring me their favorite car, and then we go through it. But you got to remember, I have to find places to put things. And taking out the gas tank is one thing, but batteries right now are a challenge. Our main goal with RiiSE going forward is to have our conversion kits at a certain price point, which we can talk about anytime, so that it's viable, economical, realistic, and sustainable for people when they do the math. So any car. Now there are two types. There's e-axles, where, like a Tesla, the motor's in the back, and out of the motor comes two drive shafts that go right to the wheel. I call that an e-axle motor. And in a V8, like, you take out a V8 gas engine, or we refer to it as ICE, internal combustion engine, with a drive shaft. So we call that a direct drive motor. Either way, you can have either or. And sometimes you can take out a V8 engine with a direct drive and make it an e-axle in the back. So the motor's in the back, the battery's up front. But when that car was born 45 years ago, the motor was in the front.
Right.
It had a direct drive to the rear diff. But I can now put the motor where the rear diff is and just have it there.
Right.
So there's combinations. But to answer your direct question, there's no car I can't do now.
Yeah.
In the sense of, but it really boils down to price, because you want to do things. We at RiiSE want to do it quick and fast. If we want to do custom, it will take longer. But our whole goal as a commercialization of this business growing is to be able to have this car, you come in, and within a month, it's converted to electric.
Within a month, you can do it.
If not sooner. That's our goal. And I will share with you, our goal is to be, right now, our goal is to be $49,900 all in. And I know it sounds like a lot, but it's a lot more right now, because batteries are 45% of the overall cost. And a 42 kilowatt battery system will get you about 180 kilometers today. So as we go into what I'd like to talk about is where we're seeing wins for us is in the circular economy, ESG, carbon credits for the fleet stuff, but things that will help us drive the price down.
Well, so yes, batteries are, you're right, the priciest component. Where do you get your batteries? Where do you source them? Or is there cost savings with used batteries?
Brilliant.
Salvage? Yeah.
So you're looking at brand new batteries. Those are Sinopoli batteries that we got out of, I believe, Korea. Now, we had to buy this during COVID. So it was struggle to get a lot of the supply chain. And in EV today, in the electrical vehicle world, or electric world, because you have e-marine, e-cars, it's the supply chain is really strained right now, because batteries are so hard to get. And they're changing and evolving. Like, these are lithium ion, and we made the system as an air-cooled system. But to answer your direct question, we are now using Tesla batteries currently from the Model S, which are lithium-ion liquid-cooled batteries. I've driven this car on the hottest day up to Whistler, and my fans keep everything cool. It's never had any problems.
Yeah.
Tesla's mastered the liquid-cooled system, so I like using it because their batteries are phenomenal. They got great density, they hold a lot of power, and they fit well into packaged.
Yeah.
But then again, the Nissan Leaf, again, air-cooled battery system, which is wonderful. And so to answer your direct question, yes, we're now exploring more and more used parts for the components to drive the price down because everyone is trying to get, like, when you buy a Lucid, a Canoe, a Tesla, a Rivian, you want brand new everything. But if you're taking a 50-year-old car and I can put in maybe a brand new motor or a used motor with used batteries, but all the technology works together, I've driven the cost down and I've made it part of the story of the car.
How much is there modification with the battery, or is it just plug and play? Can you just take a Tesla battery and plug it in, or do you have to break it down, use
Um,
modules?
There's our pictures. So here you can see the battery boxes. So everything here is now it will be on AutoCAD. But when we did this, we did it the first time was very rudimentary boxes. We built everything, measured it, and then we sent it to fabricators because we can only do so much in our shop. But welding with aluminum is tough. But we had to make it a cooled system. You can't just use the battery. There's another picture where we show the Tesla batteries. We had to plumb it. So we had to put all the batteries in sequence in series and plumb the glycol that goes through them to keep them cool. And now you're making, which is kind of funny, you're making an air-cooled car now, a liquid-cooled car.
Right.
But you do have to do modifications, not to change the battery components, just how they sit in the car.
Okay.
Like you can't just throw them in the back of your trunk. You need to have them solid so they don't move. They're plumbed, they're liquid-cooled, and also the whole battery management system, which tracks every cell independently so that when you're giving the flooring the pedal, you're getting the maximum power.
Right, absolutely. So you mentioned you'd like a standard price point of about just under 50,000, 49.5.
Yeah.
When you look at the price of a new car, that's actually not bad at all.
We'll run the economics, and I can go through it somewhat quickly. But I have a minivan. It costs about $100 to fill it. I get 1 week out of it, so I'm $400 into my minivan a month. Do the math quick. That's $5,000 a year, and maybe $2,000 to $3,000 worth of service or new tires. So you're close to like $8,000, $9,000, maybe even $10,000 a year for maintenance of a car that you're putting $100 in, and even with gas prices. So I don't want to use last year's gas prices, but just call it $10,000, but really $8,000 or use $8,000. Over 3 to 5 years, it's paid itself back, but it's the maintenance. So what I've always said is the capital expenditure is expensive, but the operational expenditure on your car drops down by 80%.
That's right. Yeah.
You're going to do tires and windshield wipers and stone chips still. Those kind of things exist, but you're not going in for oil leaks. Like your carburetor's not working. Like you're not going in for your normal things that cost a fair bit for a mechanic to dissect.
Well, that's where I'm thinking of the growth potential for this industry because right now maybe it's for your favorite sports cars, for a luxury car. But when you look at the price point and 1 month turnaround, whereas I might have to wait a year or year and a half for that car, plus you can get into your favorite car because maybe you like the older body style. There's huge growth potential. I think with any tech transformation, and I guess I use music as an example. A lot of the early classic recordings put on vinyl, and of course vinyl went by the wayside, and some of that was able to get transferred into tape and then onto CD and then onto digital. So we were able to preserve a lot of it. We lost a lot of that along the way. I think cars can be the same. We can look at it the same way. Gases can be around for a long time, but it won't be convenient because gas stations, let's face it, are going by the wayside. Maybe you can order a can of petrol from Amazon in the future or something. But here's a way of preserving a lot of that history, a lot of those classic cars, and they can well into the future through this conversion process.
Well, 1976 car, right? That thing now can last another 20 years.
And why not even longer?
Well, I would just use it as an example.
Yeah.
It could double its lifespan, but trying to get parts for it. But there will always be the enthusiast to keep it, an air-cooled car and the hum of the rev of the engine. But over time, it's going to, we have the early adopters that are doing conversions and young kids today. And when I started this business, a lot of it was my son and my daughter driving me to do something better for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a commitment. When I started to think about what am I doing and what is the outcome of this, and finding things that are scalable. And that's why when I talk about platforms, there's about 300,000 or 400,000 of these Porsches around versus like taking a Bentley, which we'll talk about in a sec, where, there aren't that many of them, but you still can convert it. And so when I'm spending time, energy, and effort to build a kit, like there you go in the front, you've got I took out the gas tank and the spare tire in the front. Now the gross overall weight of this car only went up by 200 pounds on this car because I used a battery system that I had to use at that time. If I'd done it differently today, I would have got 20% more power with 80% of the volume.
Well, is that one of the trade-offs because of the weight of the battery? Because you're not really altering the suspension or the structure of the vehicle. So I guess you have to be mindful of the added weight when you're factoring power or range, right?
To get them registered, so that's a great question. You have to keep as much of it as base as possible. I didn't do anything to the suspension. I didn't raise the car. I didn't lower the car. I used almost the exact same weight distribution and balance, and came up with this so that it was easy. Now, if I can put a Tesla Model S engine in this car and give it 350 horsepower, never designed for it. So on top of that, I'd have to add $20,000 to $30,000 worth of suspension. But then when you go to register it, it's not like the hydrogen days. You took a hydrogen vehicle, you said I switched the fuel, and now it's hydrogen. I would have to go to and do it under a resto mod, restoration modification. I don't with this because all I'm doing is changing the fuel source and keeping everything stock. Now we can go to the extremes, but as a commercialization for RiiSE, we want to be able to do things fast and reasonably priced and get to not cheap, but a really good price. But it's going to have to evolve over time.
Yeah, there is scalability with this for sure. And as you get into bigger location, you can start doing much more of these and at a lower point.
Yep. And the batteries over time will come down because more suppliers will come to the market, but good stuff, not cheap. And I don't like using that word. It's just I want things that are available, supply chain problems gone away, and things that we can get on an ongoing basis.
This episode of the EV-Friendly podcast series is made possible in part by Autel. Autel is a leading developer of automotive diagnostic products. Their new MaxiSys EV tablets and upgrade kit provide comprehensive electric, hybrid, and fuel-powered vehicle coverage. Visit autel.com for more information.
Yeah, well, this is what's so exciting because, yes, it's exciting to restore classic cars and everyone loves them. There's a real environmental component here because most people recognize, yes, we're transforming to electric. But the emphasis is always on new. We have hundreds of thousands of cars that are out there right now that can last years and years. EV conversions is a way of keeping and maintaining those rather than scrapping them. I think that translates into your sort of second stream of business, which is the buses and the fleets. So do you want to comment about that?
Sure.
How can we get that off the ground?
It doesn't have to be old cars, but we've chosen the classic cars because, and I'll come to the buses in a second, but I chose the classic cars because Vancouver is the hub for supercars. And there's a lot of, the type of wealth that comes with the car, and people have put time, energy, and effort, and love, and time, and attention. And if they can make it EV, it stays on the road, and it's longer, it's more economical. I started this also through the sustainability series with the government. They put on this, Minister Ralston, Minister Fleming, and Minister Haymond.
Yeah.
They put on a sustainability series, and I went to them and I talked about it because I was explaining what we're doing. But you're not going to get government support to offset a car, and you're not going to get carbon credits. The one challenge I've had with this car,
why not?
Well,
why?
Because
why give an incentive on a new, but not on a conversion?
Well, but you know what? It's probably a great question. I think I've been browbeated because everywhere I go, a door closes on me. A door closes. Like I've spent, on this car, it cost me $60,000 to do it, being the first one in the prototype. I can't get an OK sticker for it. Now you can get a Mitsubishi. I think it's the Mitsubishi Outlander. It's got a electric engine and a gas engine. It pollutes, but you can have an OK sticker with that one. But you can't with mine. And so I went to the police station. I went to the RCMP, and I did tell them, I said, listen, I'm going to drive in the HOV lane with a fully electric car, and I will probably get a ticket. I'm not doing it to disrupt. I'm doing it so that I can figure out a way, how could I get an incentive to be an OK sticker? And also, from a carbon offset, we should have that ability that, if you're going to take, I don't know how they measure the carbon offset credit for a single car, but there's value to it. It's more scalable when you look at fleets and buses. And that's why we chose a number of them to go after, trying to get the price point to half of what it would be for a fleet or a bus, which we can talk about. But once again, the doors have been closed because I keep asking questions that people never asked to. And I believe CVES, Commercial Vehicle...
CVSE, Safety Enforcement.
Yeah, sorry, I with the acronyms. Sorry,
yes.
So
a Commercial Vehicle Safety Enforcement, they're not only do they handle the big rigs and the commercial, but they also handle the rebuilds and the modifications and passenger vehicles.
So I've had them, and I've shown the cars and everything. And the challenge is, in Canada, new vehicles are done by the federal government, and used vehicles are done by the provincial government. And so it becomes a challenge when you do something like this. They're not sure how to handle it because nobody really is doing it. People are doing it as a hobbyist. With my team, we've decided to try and make this commercialized. We'd like to do more and more. So we are pushing the boundaries to have people talk about it. How do we do this? Like if 50 cars show up next year, how do we handle them?
That's right.
And so I've had to, it's administrative work, and so it takes a lot of time. And they've been really good at Greg and who I've dealt with at
CVSE.
Yeah, they've been wonderful in guiding me. And they said, Dean, like we don't know where to go quite yet.
I don't think they do.
No, but what has been really good, they've been really open. And even my techs, like Monty, who I'd love to be here today, and hopefully you'll talk to him another time. He's been in it for 30 years, and he's seen the evolution of it come and go. Or something like who killed the electric car? Well, it did die. It's come back, and now we're bringing it back in a different form. There's what's wonderful about EV too. It's a very inclusive community. Like, we all want to try and see people succeed. Like GM wants Ford to fail. Ford wants, Tesla to fail. And Tesla, like there's competitiveness. But in what we're doing here, the more people that are doing it's EV friendly, just like your show. Right?
Absolutely.
Like when I wrote the codes with the guys to work on the controller for the motor, I'm happy to share it with you for free. Like, because, and then when you buy the kit, you'll get it. But why spend time trying to figure out how to switch the gears at what ratio? Like,
that's right.
The more stuff that gets out there, we become a circular economy by reusing Tesla batteries or Leaf batteries or Leaf motors or Tesla motors. Any components that we can, but we want it all to make it safe. So when you look at a lot of the componentry, I could put a motor in a car or a bus and literally attach batteries and it would go. But 80% of the stuff you're looking at is for safety. And that's where, it's important to have that as well.
Right. So it's not surprising that it's just the government on the regulatory end is behind where the technology is. And I think it's a continuous raising awareness, getting in talking to the right people. Sometimes it takes getting that ticket for driving on the HOV lane to spearhead Norway off, because Norway is now percent electric. It was actually, remember the 80s band, Aha?
Yes.
It was the story there was I forget his name, was one of the lead singers. He had bought this electrified Fiat Panda, and he would park in because he thought it was electric, he was trying to advocate for free parking for EVs, and he would constantly be getting these tickets for parking infringements. The car would go up for auction, nobody would buy it, he would buy it back. And it's just the publicity started to spearhead Norway's whole movement towards electrification. So sometimes it starts with just getting that ticket in the HOV lane.
But the government is also, like, I love the government and I get frustrated because it's bureaucratic and you get lost in paperwork and doing things. But the government has been very receptive to what we're doing, but nobody's pulled the trigger and said, let's do it or let's support it more on the conversion side.
Yeah.
Because everybody's enamored with new. But just in that, like, portable power, we partnered with a company that portable power. So instead of using a diesel generator, you'd have 5 kilowatts in the back of a BCAA car that could charge a car that's stalled as opposed to running a diesel generator. There's many practical applications, but until somebody takes it on as important to them, or in the government, you need a campaign promise. I've had a number of government officials very interested in what we're doing. And everybody wants to be kept in the loop.
Right.
But nobody's standing up and saying, you know what? Why? Why are we spending $400,000 on a brand new school bus when RiiSE has come to an ability to convert an existing bus for $200,000?
Right.
Now, there are 4 main bus companies. It's political. It gets me in hot water when I talk about it because I challenge people to the status quo. You can't make a change without just ruffling feathers. But we have Lion Electric. The bus right now costs $600,000 to make, and the government is offsetting that bus by $200,000. So that the open market on this bus is about $400,000 for the school board. So the school board can buy a diesel or gas bus for $135,000. Now, their electric bus is going to cost them $400,000. If they converted it, they'd only spend $200,000. Now there's OPEX and CAPEX. The CAPEX to buy the bus is paid for by or supported by the federal government, and then the provincial government helps out with the operational costs. And it costs about $35,000 a year to run a school bus, just in gas alone.
So if we had a commitment, government says, Dean, great idea. Let's move forward with it. How far away are we actually from being operational into converting bus fleets?
Well, it's now getting further. The reason why is because I
Yeah.
put so much time and energy into it, and there's a couple problems that's happening. We're seeing a massive shift to social media and culture and influencers where today 4 of those people should have become heavy-duty mechanics. It's hard to find heavy-duty mechanics. So there's a whole subculture that's happening.
It's a huge problems in the labor attraction
Yeah,
and getting people in the skilled trades. That's going to be my next point.
Yeah.
Is you're just one person. We need a whole hundreds of you.
We do, but I've worked with with the buses in particular, and we'll pull off the cars for a bit. Happy to come back to it because as RiiSE is a company that our format is very straightforward. We're laser focused on driving the price down and quick turnarounds, so it's commercialized, and I'm very proud of that goal and ambition with my team.
Yeah.
With the buses, we've shelved it for a while because I have worked with the government. Now, one of the things I didn't mention is if you're the Langley School District and you want to buy a brand new bus and it's electric, the government will give you a $120,000 grant to buy the $400,000 bus.
Right.
Okay, so if you take 120 out of 400, you're left with 280.
Yeah.
Okay, and from there, the operational cost is going to be about $50,000 a year less between gas and operational.
Mm-hmm.
So within 3 to 4 years, the bus has paid for itself. Now, in tourism and travel, if you buy a brand new bus and do the exact same, the government, I believe, presently is only giving a $50,000 grant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tourism and travel runs 24/7. School buses run a couple hours a day. But there's a whole ecosystem around the school bus or tourism and travel or buses in general. And in the province of British Columbia, we have 2 manuals, one that's 5.5 inches thick and one that's 5.5 inches thick. One is for the yellow school buses, AM, PM pickup, that we all see, and this is for all other buses. And the government has these. This one is called the D250.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is controlled and regulated by an organization in BC that does all the procurement of buying buses for the industry, for the school boards. The challenge is that the 4 main bus manufacturers don't want me doing what I'm doing. So they'll fight tooth and nail. They'll put things in there like if you change the fuel source of the bus, it can no longer be an AM, PM school bus. So it protects them. And the school bus industry, the yellow school bus industry, has a 12-year cyclical flow. So if you and I and 2 other friends owned all the school buses, we know every 12 years we're going to have a cyclical flow of turnaround. And the electrification of all the school buses, not converting ICE buses to electric, is going to cost taxpayers $34 billion over the next 12 years. So what I went to the government with, and I worked with Ed Shriver out of Manitoba. He used to be the, bear with me, he runs the Northern Heritage Fund. And and then Al McDonald, the mayor of North Bay, called and he wanted to convert his bus fleet in North Bay. We had to go to government because this D250 has all these rulings that won't allow anybody to certify it. But they'll certify brand new.
Right.
But they won't take the time to go, okay, for $200,000 we could convert. What I tried to say, I spent an hour with Anthony Rota, the Speaker of the House, because most things get funneled to him. Mm-hmm. And I kind of went down the path with Anthony around it, and I was very adamant. We got to a point where if you gave me 20% of the yellow school buses, so right now we have about 86,000 yellow school buses in Canada. If they gave 20,000 of those, any of them between 1 and 5 years of age, so they're still new, and we converted them for 200, you'd save 200. The school district would say 200.
Yeah.
So Ken, I'd like to say you order one bus, and instead of buying it for 400, you're the principal of a school. I would love to deliver you your current bus electrified and hand you a check back for 200 because you were going to have to buy it for 4. Mm-hmm. Now the scalability, the metrics, could change a little bit, but there'd be more rounding errors.
Absolutely.
But I want the government, so they did call, and we were trying to work on a test pilot. And they said, Dean, we're really strung by this D250, and we can't get around it. And I'm not sure. I think they can. They're just not willing to right now.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is we only have a 10-year window, 12-year window.
That's right.
The bus companies are going to cyclically flow through it, and within 12 years, all school buses will most likely, touch wood, be electric, if not sooner. Yeah. And that adds, and there's a massive amount of carbon offset. Yeah. And then RiiSE, as we visualize where we want to go. I'll give you this example. we want every school bus, and we did this with BC Hydro. We had them come to the office, went through. Every school bus we want to have an 8-hour charge on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they only are going to operate in the morning for an hour and a half, and in the evening, an hour and a half, pick up and drop off because it's the AM, PM. It's not the auxiliary buses, the white ones that drive to the football games or go to Science World and back. These are the yellow school buses.
Yeah. Right.
Now, if that bus had an 8-hour charge, I live in North Van, and 3 times a year, I have power outages, and our school is closed. And what that causes is about $500,000 to $1 million on our economy of moms and dads having to stay home, not go to work, take their kids out of school. You paid for daycare, you can't use it. There's this whole ecosystem that happens. Now, working with BC Hydro, they're clamoring to find different ways for energy. And these buses, 3 buses from West Van, where the school didn't go down, could come over to North Van for the 1 or 2 schools and back to grid, could plug in and run the school for the time of day, and we wouldn't be out. But that is so too much for the government to grab.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
So the electrical transformation of our economy and of our transportation network is so vast and so big. It's one person cannot take it all in. It's just going to take a team effort getting that message out. And speaking of that, there's been a real rise in skepticism of EVs. I think a lot of people are feeling that they're being forced into this. We hear a lot of the chatter on the Facebook. It's just a real rise in it. One skeptical argument we do hear with the conversion is of what happened in the 1990s. And as you recall, there was a lot of incentives to go propane and natural gas. A lot of cars were converted, and that lasted about 5 years. We wanted to switch to biodiesel. Same thing, that petered out. What do you say to the skeptic who says, you know what, this is just going to be it's going to fall flat?
Personally, because and I hear you, we all lived it, we all saw it. But I look at what Elon Musk did with EV. And, from the head of GM to the head of Ford, nobody believed it would. And now everybody's clamoring, and people are making commitments. We're getting rid of all gas or internal combustion engines by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
And they're driving it towards electric. It's like oil and gas in the United States. So much oil and gas fuels political campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to support.
Right.
It's hard to get BC Hydro to throw $10 million behind a political campaign, public company that provides a service.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see that the environmental impact of electric can only get better. Now, when I had to do the change of fuel source, the paperwork was based off of the days of hydrogen when people went to hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And also I go back to the D250. About 8 years ago, a number of great minds got together and started converting buses to hydrogen. The bus companies didn't like it, so somewhere in this, they wrote a line that said, if you change the original fuel source from the OEM's original fuel source, it will no longer be considered an AM/PM school bus. That's how they squashed it.
Yeah.
So that now transcends to electric for now, but the government didn't support it quite the same way. Like, how many hydrogen gas stations do we have? Maybe 12?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's more coming.
Yep.
Without a doubt. But, and a BCIT, Jesus, are amazing in what they've done. And, they've got a hydrogen fill there. Now I've got one at Westview in North Van, but there's far and few where electric can be on everybody's doorstep where they are.
It just doesn't seem feasible. I certainly see it as a future in the heavy equipment.
Absolutely.
Maybe in the tractor trailers, although that seems to be going electric now too with Tesla's Semi.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to take a continuing coordinated effort and get people talking about the whole life cycle of this transformation, which is very important. That's what EVfriendly is about as well. Let's turn to marketing. We want to get people excited. I think this is an exciting topic, and hopefully somebody's out there. They've got an old classic car or something that they want to come to you and get converted. Where do you see the future in marketing? What does RiiSE EV do? Is there auto shows dedicated to this sort of thing, or is there a future in that?
There is, like, there are a number of organizations that are EV friendly, but I think when you're on the main stage with auto, like, I'm sad that the Vancouver Auto Show got canceled this year.
Yeah.
We were working hard to be involved with them and show what could be done, and they were very excited about it. And once again, it was a supply chain problem,
Yeah.
for the cars not being there. And then and I'm going to blank on it, the one that's coming up.
Fully charged.
Fully
show
charged, sorry, yes.
In September.
Yeah, September. Like, that's another great one. And the group that was doing the auto show is, I think, trying to put one on at the PNE.
Yeah.
And then I do coffee and cars. I love taking the cars to coffee and cars anywhere.
Interesting. Explain that. What's
Well,
coffee and cars?
Like Porsche Club of America.
Okay.
Or, there's a number of places that do, every Saturday morning or Sunday morning, they do coffee and cars, and people bring all their old classics and they sit and they chat. And then I show up and,
In the electric. And are they receptive to you, or are you an outcast?
Before it used to be like 9, the classic guys weren't. Now it's like maybe 7. It's slowly the early adopters. It's getting better. Because when I spend time sharing the passion around, it's good for the environment. It also costs less. It keeps the car on the road. And today, young kids are not going that way. So whatever I leave my children, like the 26-year-old today, generally they're doing car shares. They're not spending a lot of time on cars. So the whole movement of automobile will change. But the next wave of Gen whatever coming through in the next 15 years, they're going to be left cars. And what do they do with these old cars? Because a lot of people aren't going to fix them anymore, and they've been born and bred in electric. So it's a natural evolution. So I think we're kind of 2 years ahead of the time, but we're 2 years in the right time because we're learning and getting there.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that they're going to want to preserve that past. They're going to see the value in it, and that's why I use the music as an example. They're wanting to go back and bring this and bring it forward. I definitely see it. You're a real optimist as I am. Where are we going to be in 5 to 10 years in this industry?
Well, I think they'll solve their supply chain problems.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't go like the bike batteries. Like, there's so many bike batteries out there catching fire or whatever. So safety is massive. People are trying to get the cheapest to the floor. But I think with what we're doing with battery technology is going to drive longevity and distance.
Okay.
And so in 5 years, you're going to see the Lucid, the Rivians, but also depends on how the government of Canada under the federal government allows new car companies coming in, because around the world, there are a lot of car companies starting to come up, just like the amount of bike companies that are out there, right? So
it's very reminiscent of what happened at the turn of the century. Before Henry Ford came out in 1908 with Model T, there were tons and tons of these startups making cars, and we're seeing that as well.
Yep.
So the question is, will the big OEs just be buying them out, or will they just take over?
I tried to answer it. So yes, in the next, I see there will be, like, there's over 1.5 billion cars on this planet, vehicles. Like, it's a massive, staggering number, and less than 2% of the cars are electrified. Like, it's such a small number.
Yeah,
but we have such an emphasis on it, so it can only grow. It will become an ecosystem. It will become the TikTok of, or the Facebook of its generation in regards to the EV world or the car world or the vehicle world. So in 10 years, we're going to see a massive amount. I don't know what the percentage, but I'd like to make a bet with you, and we can have a beer over who gets closer to what the percentage of cars in 10 years will be. But as I know, like, what I love about the government in their sustainability series and how they're not forcing, but they're highly incentivizing, like, the airport to be fully electric. Why wouldn't you, right? Like, when you have diesel burning things that are, we know what it does to the environment under ESG. We know how it affects our planet. So why are we not trying to preserve it? Why are we not trying to make it a friendly visual vision to get to? So in 10 years, I see a massive amount moving to electric, as long as supply chain and chip and the batteries can be resolved, which is wonderful. In the conversion side, in 10 years, you're going to look at the 12-year-old today who's going to be driving, and he and she will only know electric.
Yeah.
They only know, they're the science and technology generation. We were the technology, or I was, I grew up with technology like Game Boy, and then I got an iPad, but my kids have been the technology, science, and it's just about evolving.
That's right.
How we can take an old classic, like we have a 1959 Bentley. Now, it's a one-off. And the owner, this owner is, and not only that, he is adamant that he'd love to see the last gas station close. And he bought this with the vision of it being electric. So we're putting together a package for him. It is more of a one-off because I'm not going to get more than 1 or 2 Bentleys probably in our well, I could get a bunch now that people see it, but that's another platform. When I look at the fleets or the buses, those are different. Like you have Thomas or you have Bluebird, those are platforms. A Bentley's a platform, a Porsche is a platform. But I look for platforms that have the most amount of scope and scale for commercialization. Because RiiSE, we want to get the price point. But if you live in Manitoba and you want to open up the RiiSE shop, you can buy the platform off us. You get all the CAD drawings of all the cars we've done.
Yeah.
And you could open up there. And what it's helping grow.
Absolutely.
And it's business to start. Yeah. Profit's not a dirty word, but we want to make it economical. And the more scalable it becomes, the more economical it becomes.
So if somebody has a classic car, they want to do more research, or they want to get a hold of you and talk about a conversion, how do they do that?
RiiSEV.com.
Okay.
It's the easiest way. We got a lot of looky-loos. Like, I've got my 1994 Jimmy. It's my favorite car, and gas prices are too high. It's really hard to sell somebody on a $9,000 car that's rust-bucketed. It's not going to be a cheap conversion. So that's why we thought we'd do it kind of like Tesla. They did the Roadster. They started with a really cool sports car and showed what they could do. That's why we wanted to show fast and efficient conversions. And as we bring the price down, then we could do the minivans of the world. But, I've always referred to built to last. Stuff in the last 15 years aren't built to last. Older cars were built to last. So we can keep those older ones. But you buy and I don't want to say any minivan company in particular, but you buy one that's 10 years old, like it's rusted out, the frame's not solid, the steel's only, quarter inch thick, not there's all these things that hinder it from, because you built it to last in the back in the day and the way the craftsmanship, and we can keep those on the road. It wouldn't be as, beneficial to keep a car that was built 5 years ago, but a bus that's already on the road, if I can keep it on the road for 10 more years, electric and not pollute, very different story. So the economics of it.
Dean, thank you very much for being on the podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Ken.
And the best of luck to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The best. We got to make that bet.
Yeah. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, we have our audio podcast, which is EV Friendly on the Go, available wherever you download your podcasts. Thank you very much.